are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Okay, hello and welcome to episode 0010 of James Bond Radio. I'm Tom Sears and I've got my good buddy Chris. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Yeah, how you doing today, buddy?
Boom. I'm doing good. I'm feeling in quite a bright mood. I don't know if you noticed, but
I've noticed you look like you've been out dealing with roadworks or something like that. For people who aren't watching on YouTube, Chris has got the most voluminous, bright yellow hoodie thing on, and he looked like he's been directing traffic or something. It's a good look, man. I like it.
Cheers, dude. Well, it was the sun, you know. It's watching Thunderball, the exoticness. I just thought, you know, brighten the day up a bit.
Absolutely. I need some sunshine in my life right now. Absolutely. So it'll be bloody
Here
nice.
it is.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, man. You've brightened my day already. So how did you feel about the interview with Aaron last week? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was really good fun. Yeah, it was good to, obviously we'd been chatting a bit with him on messaging and stuff, so it was really nice to meet him for real and have a chat with him. And yeah, he seemed like a really good guy and liked everything that we seemed to like as well, so that was quite cool.
Yeah, I noticed on Twitter a good few of our listeners were tweeting to him saying they enjoyed the interview and they were going to buy a copy of his book and stuff. So it was good for him as well. Hopefully we've boosted his sales with our millions of listeners.
Oh wow!
Well, not quite millions yet. We're up to about 7,000 downloads at the minute, but I think it's going to be millions soon by Christmas. I reckon
it's getting
be a few
there.
million. Yeah. So with that said. We've had a bit of a coup, haven't we? We've had a bit of is coup the right word? That's when you overthrow a government, isn't it? But you know,
well, it is, but perhaps we can use that.
Yeah, fuck it, we'll go with it. We've managed to score our first big name 007 guest, and we're going to be recording that interview next week. Now we're not going to say who it is, but it's certainly somebody whose work I have read in the past. I guess that could be a clue, or not, maybe. But there we go. We're just going to leave it at that. But I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah, I am. It's good. It'll be nice to interview with that particular person as well.
Absolutely. Who may be male or female, and may be alive or dead. We don't know. So we're just going to mix it up and throw out some white elephants in the room for you. Cool. So so we've got another interview coming up for you soon. But today we're talking all about Bond number 4, Thunderball. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Well, it was great fun. Yeah, it was good. Like I said, it put me in good mood. It made me want to, you know, leave the UK and move permanently to Nassau, which might still be in the cards. But
I think, like I said, in the episode before last, in the Goldfinger episode, we're nearing the end of like Bond mania, aren't we? In the sense that like this is some would say is the peak of it, and then there was some kind of, you know, a little bit of dodginess in the films to follow. So it's I think it's a worrisome time for us as reviewers, in the sense that we've got a few dodgy movies coming up. I can think of one in particular, whereas everything's been pretty spot on and pretty perfect up until now. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed it. I've got a lot to say about Thunderball, a lot of thoughts and things that I hadn't previously considered and have now. So I'm excited to get stuck in.
Let's go.
Now, before we do, just the usual roundup. Come and join us on Facebook, James Bond Radio. Join us on Twitter, which is at James Bond Radio, or come and take our Ultimate Bond quiz, where you can get your 007 ranking, which you can get on jamesbondradio.com, and just sign up on the little email box on the right. And the most important thing is if you could come and give us a review on iTunes, and just give us as many stars as you think we deserve, and be as nice and complimentary, because that really helps us to rank higher in iTunes, and bless you, and we get more listeners off the back of it. So that would be really, really nice if you could do that. Now, before we crack on with the content of today's episode, we've had a bit of fan mail come in, Chris.
Ooh, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah. First of all, we've had a little email come in from Mr. Steve Smith, who says, "Hey guys, been listening to the podcast. Great fun so far. The Goldfinger episode has been my favourite. I think you've timed the start of James Bond Radio perfectly, as Bond fever crescendos and climaxes yet again with Bond 25. I think he means Bond 24, but we'll let him off. Your readership will soar. Again, I think he means listenership, but we'll let him off with that as well. I've just finished taking the Ultimate James Bond quiz episode, in brackets, no need to get into my score, and discovered one of the 6 deliberate editing mistakes at the 1 hour, 27 minute and 40 second mark of Goldfinger. Still looking for the other 5 to win that all expenses paid trip to Pinewood and lunch with James Bond. I can't wait. Keep up the great work, Steve. So if you haven't taken our Ultimate quiz yet, what he's referring to is an interview with Guy Hamilton, who said there was a kid who wrote in saying that he'd spotted a mistake with the wheels on the Aston Martin DB5 and how they'd changed, and he said, just to mess with the kid a bit, was just like, okay, well, that's a deliberate mistake we put in, and there's 6 more in there, and if you find them all, you can come to Pinewood, all expenses paid, and have lunch with James Bond, just to mess with the kid because he was a little smartass. So there we go. Steve has discovered one of those editing mistakes. Are you excited about that?
Oh, well done, Steve. Yeah, that's a good job. I think if we all plug together, all James Bond radio fans plug together, between us, we could spot all 5, and maybe they'll invite all of us at the same time.
There we go. Yeah,
we'll go nice. En masse.
I think if there's any type of fan that would be into the minutiae of trying to spot editing mistakes, I think it would be Bond fans.
I think it
maybe actually, I think in number 1 would probably be either Star Wars or Star Trek. I'd say they'd be a bit more obsessive, but maybe not. But yeah. And then the next one we've had is, and this might be a nice idea actually. He's given us some thoughts on a particular episode subject we could cover. This one's from Pete Rana or Rayner. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. He says, "Hi guys, I've got a suggestion for a subject of, if only for a part of your show, called Bond and the Censors. All of the following films were cut by the BBFC and or the MPAA. Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, Never Say Never Again, A View to a Kill, License to Kill, GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Die Another Day, Casino Royale, and Quantum of Solace. Although some of the cuts, thanks man, although some of the cuts have been reinstated in the DVD versions of the films, the rest may sadly be lost forever. If you have the resources to investigate, that would be great to hear on the show. Just imagine if someone one day found censored footage of Goldfinger or From Russia with Love. That would be amazing. Great show, guys. Keep up the good work. Regards, Pete." Now that's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. Good suggestion, Pete. And something which do you know what? It was quite funny. When I was really young, watching the Bonds with my dad, like I mentioned it before, it's normally on VHS, would stick it in, would watch a film. Now, a lot of those old videos had some footage missing. Even some of them might have even been recorded off the TV, and sometimes they don't leave it all in.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of films I've seen in later years where there's been a new bit. There's been a new scene in a film. I think I was watching Diamonds, and there was a new bit in the pre-credit sequence that suddenly appeared, and I was like, "Where the fuck has this come from?" But so joyous about it, because it's almost like something that you've seen so much and that you love so much. There's a new bit to it, and it got me so excited. So if we could get something along those lines, I'd jump down the street. I think I'd love it.
Yeah. I think we should throw out the net to our listeners and see if anybody knows of anything. Because sometimes a lot of that stuff kind of just surfaces on YouTube out of nowhere, doesn't it? So if anybody knows of any kind of deleted scenes or things that have been cut out and censored or whatever, do let us know on Facebook or via email or whatever. That would be really interesting, because I sort of felt like for years that you buy any DVD and there's always a few deleted scenes on there. And throughout the history of Bond, they never seem to release any of them. Like, obviously they have with the recent ones with Daniel and stuff, but like until recently, I don't think I'd ever seen a deleted scene from a Bond film. And the only one that sticks in mind that I've found on the discs is a scene in A View to a Kill, where I think he'd been arrested or something, and basically the policeman's giving him back like his watch and all that kind of stuff. And he says a lot. What is the line he says? Like, he quotes a previous Bond movie. He was like, oh man, what is it he says? He says something like, "Oh, you only live twice," or something like that. It's just silly. It was a bit cringe, really. It's like, I can see why they cut it out. But still, it's like, I would love to see more of that. Like, even if it's just really rubbish stuff. To see Connery, new footage of him as Bond in his prime would be fucking incredible, man. I would love to see that.
Hopefully, I think the odd photo pops up, the odd still, and that sort of is enough to get me excited. But yeah, if we can, I mean, that's going to be a lot of research. But if we can find some footage, I mean, we'll have to sort of show it and go from there.
Well, there we go, listeners. Go on the hunt, see if you can comb YouTube for any deleted scenes, and maybe if we get enough, we can put together an entire episode. If not, we'll just do a little segment on a future episode and kind of put those together. So before we get cracking on Thunderball, as you so kindly announced on Facebook the other day, it was my birthday, 32 years old. I feel like an old man.
Happy birthday, Tommy.
Thanks, man. And I got this rather wonderful birthday card from my oldest brother Matthew. It says, I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see if you're watching on YouTube. It says, "Have you heard about the new 007 Viagra?" And there's a picture, a little cartoon picture of somebody who looks suspiciously Bond-like on the front. And then you open it up and it says, "It makes you Roger more." Now,
I like it.
I hadn't really thought about this, but Roger Moore's name itself is a double entendre, isn't it? Now, I don't know if anybody outside of England would know it, but the term "to Roger" would mean, to have sex with, right? So Roger Moore would be the opposite of Rogering less. So he's kind of got that sexual double entendre built into his very name, which I think is quite funny, considering how...
Maybe that was why he was chosen for the part, perhaps.
Maybe that was yeah. But a funny thing nonetheless. But there we go. So should we crack on with some Thunderballage?
I'm just trying to think of some more. You could have Pierce Moore if he had the surname. If you were piercing something a bit more.
Pierce Moore, yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I hadn't considered
that's
that
one.
That's
not bad. We'll come up with some more.
Darling, I would like to pierce you this evening.
Nice.
I'm not sure how appealing that sounds to the ladies, but hey, it works nonetheless. Okay, then. So before we crack on and start talking about the movie, it's trivia time. Okay, so I'm going to let you go first this time, Chris. Go for it. Let me hear your trivia question of the day.
Well, my trivia question of the day is based on Thunderball, funnily enough, and it is to do with what. There are 2 cameos in Thunderball. From people from the Bond production team, 2 cameos. Who are those people? Who are the cameos?
I think I know one, and I've got a good sort of calculated guess about who the other one might be.
Okay, nicely
so
done.
yeah, all right, cool. Okay, that's a good question. My question also involves another film that's not Thunderball, but sort of is at the same time. My question is, what is the name of Largo's boat in Thunderball? And, easy question, most people will get that. What is the name of Largo's boat in Never Say Never Again?
I like it. Good crossover there.
Thank you very much.
Tricky though.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've got a while till we actually get to Never Say Never Again. So we'll cross that bridge again when we get there. But we're going to reveal the answers to our trivia questions at some point throughout today's episode. So should we crack on and talk about a bit of Thunderballage?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. Now, my first thing that I discovered, which, like I say, I'm appreciating the fact that this is a whole new way of discovering Bond and rediscovering things I didn't previously know by watching all the movies in sequence. And I thought to myself, what exactly is a Thunderball, right? And I know John Barry and when they were writing the song had some things, what is Thunderball? How do we write a song about Thunderball? Because it's ultimately a meaningless word. Well, Chris Wright, I'm telling you now, it's not a meaningless word, and I've found what it means. Are you excited?
Oh, wow. Shivering. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. And this is great. I'm pleased I found this. The dictionary definition of the word Thunderball is that it was a military term used by US soldiers to describe the mushroom cloud seen during the testing of atomic bombs. Hence its use as a title, because this would be the result of Spectre detonating the stolen atomic bombs.
Like it.
It's good, isn't it?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I always thought Thunderball was just one of those meaningless titles that he just thrown together. But it does have a meaning. And again, this seems to happen a lot, and I wonder if they're all like this. Like a word like octopussy, for example. I thought it was just a Flemingism he'd made up, but that actually is a hand you get in Texas Hold'em as well. I think it's like a hand with 2 8s or something.
It's a double, It's a double 8.
That's known as an octopussy. So it's a lot of these random word pairings he's used in the titles actually do have meaning. So it'll be interesting to see if we uncover any more of those as we go along.
Yeah. Skyfall, Moonraker, perhaps.
Moonraker, yeah, we'll see. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I just thought that was an interesting point. So like we always do, let's talk a little bit about our perceptions of the movie before we watched it, and then we'll talk about our perceptions afterwards at the end. So how did you feel about Thunderball? What were your thoughts towards it before you sat down to watch it again this week?
So before I sat down to watch it, I was first and foremost really looking forward to it. I hadn't seen it for a reasonable amount of time, and it's always been a good one. And yeah, I was suitably impressed, shall we say. It's actually thrown up a bit of a quandary for me because it was my favourite Bond when I was younger. I think it's my dad's favourite, and I used to watch it a lot. It's now, for me, challenging From Russia with Love for Connery's best.
Ooh.
It's knocked all the others out of the water, excuse the pun, and now it's up there. It's right up there.
Dude,
I loved it.
Coming from you, that is a big statement. I know how much of a From Russia with Love fan you are, so that's a big deal. Yeah, for me, I've always thought there's a small groupage of Bond films that are just a whole level above all the others. Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, bang, immediately a cut above everything else. The others being On Her Majesty's and Casino Royale. And yeah, I just feel when you compare it to movies like, I don't know, say The Man with the Golden Gun or even Spy Who Loved Me and a lot of the later movies, there's just something about these first four that are just like golden age stuff. You just, despite some the flaws some of them might have, they're still, including those flaws, amazing and just a whole league above the other movies. And yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's definitely up there. I'm not sure if it's my favorite. I change my ideas every day on what my favorite is. It used to be Goldfinger, but as we previously discussed, that's not the case anymore. So I think for me, it's got to be pre-watch. It's got to be considered up there. I can't say. It's three. It's got to be Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Thunderball is my joint first position for Connery, with Goldfinger kind of underneath. But we'll see. We'll rediscuss after our discussion, and it might have moved a little bit. I don't know. That's the exciting thing about it. One of the exciting points is that the interesting points, I should say, is that the budget for this one dwarfs the other movies, like all the other movies combined, even in the sense that Dr. No's budget was $1 million. From Russia with Love was 2, Goldfinger was 3 million, Thunderball 9 million. So that's a pretty humongous jump. That's all three other Bond movies put together, and then some. And
that's only 1 year. These things were released year after year. So you're talking 1 year 1 million, 1 year 2 million, 1 year 3 million. You're expecting 4, possibly 5 or 6, and it's like trebled Goldfinger's budget. And that's, heck of an amount of money, isn't it?
It is. And I think, because obviously Thunderball was originally meant to be the very first Bond movie. So it makes me think, if they tried to make Thunderball on a $1 million budget, I don't think that would have even been possible.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad they didn't, because Dr. No kind of suited itself to be that low budget thing and still work. Thunderball, you can imagine, it just wouldn't have had the scope, that climatic bit. Yeah. Obviously, we'll talk about it all, but it definitely wouldn't have been as good, I don't think, as a first time Bond film.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I imagine there were some natural script changes from that original version that would have been the first film to this, but still, there would have still been diving, there would have still been atomic bombs, there would have still been all that stuff. So, considering when you look at the production value of Dr. No, how they could have done anything remotely like the finished article of Thunderball, I think it would have. I mean, that might have been the ingredient that just flopped the whole series. It might have tanked, you know what I mean? And so thankfully Dr. No was the first one.
Yeah.
But one thing that struck me watching it is how this is 3 years on from Dr. No, right? And how much bigger and the advances that have been made in that 3 years when you compare the first film to the fourth film. It's pretty incredible. Even just the look of the film is just so much bigger and more polished, and there's just so much more going on. All those underwater scenes for 1965, the cinematography of those is unbelievable, even by today's standards, I would say.
I've not seen a film an underwater action film that's better than Thunderball, and it's 50 years old. Pretty much.
It's crazy,
You know,
isn't it? Like everything in there
insane.
is I don't know, like I don't know the technicalities of how you actually do it, but like everything in there is perfectly lit. You can see everything beautifully. I mean, do they carry massive lights down underwater with them to light that stuff up, or is it the natural sunlight coming through? I just don't know. But whatever they did was amazing, and that's got to be like one of the first ever movies that featured that amount of underwater action, surely.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it was definitely one of the first, and nothing. Like I said, I don't think there's been any film that's featured that much since, has there? Or certainly not to that degree in terms of being as good as it was. But
so I think we should plow on and actually talk about it scene by scene, don't you?
I think we should start at the start. And what's at the start for this one?
At the start is the very first Sean Connery gun barrel. Now, I think it's pretty incredible that it's taken 4 films to actually bother to get round to shooting Sean Connery do the walk and the turn and shoot. I think it's just crazy.
It is. I mean, if I had been Sean Connery, I would have said, hey now. Okay, you've let the stunt guy go for the first one. I'm the man here.
Yeah.
Let me at least do the second and third. You know, you would have thought he would have said something along those lines. But
it is crazy, isn't it? Like when you consider, like you just, unless you know that that's Bob Simmons up there on the first 3 movies, you just wouldn't know. You know, it's mental that they kind of went with that. It's so crazy. But the interesting point is they did it. It might not have even been, but the reason they did it is they started shooting in Panavision, which is more of like a widescreen format, I guess. So the footage they would have had of Bob Simmons wouldn't have matched up with the rest of the film, so they just reshot it. So had they not shot in Panavision, maybe we'd never have got Connery in the gun barrel, which is
we'd still be on Bob Simmons now. It'll be Daniel Craig, but Bob Simmons walking across in this black and white little thing.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. But I just thought
Thank
that was
God
a really
for
interesting
Panavision.
point. Yeah, but like 4 movies in, and this is the first time we see Connery in the gun barrel, which is crazy.
It's an interesting thing as well. Well, first of all, the Panavision, I think, that probably is part of the reason why Thunderball does look so good, because it's in this new format. It's larger scope for what they can use, and you could tell. I think you could definitely tell. I mean, the way that film looked was amazing.
Yeah.
But with the gun barrel, it was great to have Sean in it. But I do have to admit, I did have a look at it, and I have to admit that I did think his style was slightly shaky and a little bit unstable compared to other gun barrel shots that I've seen. What do you think?
I must be honest. I don't know whether you saw my gun barrel attempt on the Facebook page a few weeks ago.
Oh, I saw it and I bowed down. That was amazing. It really was.
I got to be honest. I reckon I did a better job than Connery. What do you reckon?
In your cardi, yeah. No, I think you might have done. You both had the little trailing leg, but his. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I was watching it, and you know, he sort of trails his right leg, and it's a bit shaky, and it's almost like he's a bit wobbly. And the last thing you want to do when you're shooting a gun is have any wobbling body part. You want to keep it solid, and you want to, you want to get your aim right.
That is the first thing I noticed. Again, I'm watching these on Blu-ray for the first time, so there's a lot more detail on screen, and it's sort of like he's got that sort of jump and the skip and the hand out and the leg out, and he does definitely have a wobble in there, which is just not what you want. I think his whole pose during that bit is just a little bit camp, to be honest with you. It's not like commanding. It's not that strong. It's a bit like, oh, I'm going to have a little jump and a shoot. Do you know what I mean?
It's over dramatic.
He's got his wrist out to the side.
Yeah.
It's like, bang. You know what I mean?
Like that. We're dissing Sean.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Sean?
I bet all our listeners have already turned off in disgust. But hey, until you judge, like, check out my gun barrel on the Facebook page. That's all I'm saying. It's a good one. And I'm throwing out the challenge to you as well, dude. You've got to.
It will be done.
Right,
it'll be done. Don't worry.
So that brings us on to the opening scene of the film, and there's like a recurring theme, as you've talked about before, with the opening pre-title sequences of Bond, where it's like they hint at Bond dying, or Bond actually does die in the beginning of those sequences. We had it in From Russia with Love, we had it in Skyfall, we had it in You Only Live Twice, and this opens up on a coffin with the initials JB. So it's like, obviously he's not dead, but there you go. So how do you feel about this especially post Goldfinger, which is some would say set the template? How do you feel about this as an opening scene, as a follow up to Goldfinger?
I think I think it's super exciting. For me, it's probably not I would put a group of, say, maybe 3, 4 at the very top. And I wouldn't put Thunderball as part of that group, the elitist group of pre-title sequence, I guess you could say. But I would definitely put it in the top half, I suppose. I think you've got such an amazing fight. You've got a proper hard-hitting fight with Bob Simmons, Connery, Peter Hunt editing. That whole sequence is amazing. You've got the rocket belt, which is like we mentioned on the Gadgets podcast. I mean, it's one of the best things you've seen on cinema, and it's real and it works. So there's a hell of a lot going for it. There are a couple of things I'm not sure about, but overall, I think is a good one. What did you think? What do you reckon?
I to be honest, for me, it feels a little bit flat. Like, I think when you compare that fight with Jacques Bouvard to, say, the train fight with Red Grant, it doesn't quite match up. Like, I don't know whether it's that weird, they've decided to do that speedy editing thing where they've actually sped up the film to make it more exciting. To me, that just looks a bit on the ridiculous side rather than actually doing what it was intended to do, which is just to make it more exciting. I don't know. There's a lot of moves in that fight I'm not quite happy with, like the sliding of the chair, and some of those jumps are a bit odd, like oddly placed jumps. But yeah, I don't know. Would you say perhaps that this is the first glimpse of camp Bond having Jacques Bouvard dressed up as a woman? Is there shades of Blofeld and Diamonds Are Forever in there?
I guess so. I mean, I thought it was an interesting idea though, because it gives Bond the opportunity to use his intellect when he sees that she opens the door for herself, and that's the first thing that he realizes, right, this is Jacques Bouvard, I'm going to have to sort this guy out. So I think that there's a nice little link there. And I know what you mean about the editing. Like, some parts I think it's done well, but I think he purposefully took out frames. So it wasn't just speeding up, it was actually taking out certain frames. So it almost jumps. So it's like jump edits.
Oh, okay.
Which sometimes I think works well. The pre-titles of On Her Majesty's when he's in the fist fight is a similar
very much so,
thing. I mean, I did quite like it. I don't think it was definitely up to Goldfinger's pre-titles. I thought it was a bit, the colouring wasn't quite there for some reason for me. And I still don't understand. The thing that annoys me more than anything is why the Aston Martin was
I knew this was coming.
Why it had rust on it or crap on it or whatever it was. What? I don't know.
Well, I know this pains you, so I played extra special attention to it this time. And there is a possibility, there is an explanation, I think, that might be true. Good. I don't know whether you'll agree with this or not. But that jetpack kicks up an awful lot of dust. So it could have been sat there perfectly polished and looking fine. And then the fact that he's landed just behind it and all that steam and smoke and God knows what, that might have just, I'm not sure, because it's one of those things where like that dirt is very brown looking. It almost looks like sand or mud, whereas it would be more of a gravel kind of terrain that he was landing in. So I don't know whether I've just bullshitted myself or not, but that is one possibility that they could have been going for. What do you think?
I tell you what, I'm gonna hook that idea and I'm gonna implant it in here because I like it. I like it. That's the only thing that I can think it could have been now. So thank you. That's put me.
No worries. But you're right. It does look grubby and rubbish and needs a good old clean. But there we go. How could you ever let a vehicle that beautiful get so dirty? I don't know.
No.
There we go. One thing I always thought was amusing is the whole Bond taking a moment to strap on his helmet before he flies off. But there was a good reason for it, wasn't it? They actually shot it. And if you look on the DVD extras or the Blu-ray extras, there you actually see the footage of Connery strapping on the jetpack without the helmet on. But the guy who actually flew the jetpack was like, I ain't doing it without a helmet. So they had to then reshoot that bit with Connery strapping up, which I thought was quite funny.
Sensible chap. I guess they could have got a helmet with like hair stuck to it, use the makeup and hair department.
That is true. I mean, they had to do that with Connery normally, didn't they, really?
Well, that's true. Just put like the second toupee on the helmet and away you go.
I do. It's always sort of made me chuckle a little bit that he's like, oh, I've got to do this safely. I've got to put my safety equipment on. And I was expecting him to have elbow pads and shin pads on as well, but he didn't go that far.
Oh, that's good. There are a couple of other little things that crept in for me with which is sometimes the dubbing doesn't, like, not even dubbing. Like, there are parts where you can see Bond talk, but the dialogue doesn't quite fit his mouth. And that, there's parts in the pre-title sequence where that's quite, you notice it quite a lot.
I was going to say, I've got this written in my show notes. I noticed that so much through the entire movie.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
Obviously, like, Largo is dubbed and Domino's dubbed, but like, it seems like everyone has had some serious amount of dubbing. Like, even Q's scene, there's scenes where Q's speaking and his mouth is literally not moving. And it's blatantly obvious. And again, I don't know whether I can see that because it's Blu-ray and it's just, I'm watching it on a bigger screen than usual. But yeah, like the dubbing guy seems to have sort of skipped a few lessons, I think, this time around.
Well, it seems strange. I think the job that he did with Largo, with Domino, was brilliant because they needed to be dubbed. But for English-speaking ones, I'm not quite sure what happened. But it's just something that I noticed this time round of watching the film, which was a bit of a strange
me too.
one.
No, it was painfully obvious actually throughout most of the film that was going on. So that brings us on to the title sequence itself. Now, one noticeable difference from the last few outings is that Maurice Binder has taken over full time. We've got no Robert Brownjohn this time. Right. So, you got any idea what happened to old Brownjohn? Why he decided not to come back?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether Binder was always going to come back, or because he was busy on the previous two, and after Dr. No, he still had the gig, or whether Brownjohn. I'm not sure on this one actually. That's something I'd have to look into. Yeah, I
think in terms of the actual sequence itself, it's very much like the template for the later films, isn't it? Like, you think a lot of those Roger ones, and it's all about the naked silhouetted girl and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, there's a lot of kind of swimming motions and stuff going on there. But there's a lot of, I feel like Goldfinger is almost its own entity. You've got the scenes from the film projected onto the stomach of the Golden Girl and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this one definitely has that feel of, like, you look at, say, Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only, all those kind of movies. It has that sort of Thunderballian title sequence feel. What do you reckon? Do you enjoy this title sequence?
Yeah, no, I liked it. I think also Binder brought back his use of colour. You could tell that because in Dr. No, he had the motifs and the dancing people. And in this one, he had the red and the blue and, like, used it a lot with the underwater. So you could tell that the things he was into was colour. And then following Brownjohn, he's probably thought, oh, let's get some ladies in there as well, and
let's make them naked at the same time.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm fully supporting of that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so welcome back, Maurice.
A couple of other things of point I think we should talk about is the fact of the actual credits themselves. We've got, based on an original story by Kevin McClory, Jack Whittingham, and Ian Fleming. Ian comes last. Kevin comes first. Interesting. Now, we're going to do a full-on episode about the whole Kevin McClory debacle and the lawsuits that followed and has only recently been settled. We're going to do a full-on episode on that soon, so we're not going to spend too much time on that today. But I just thought it was interesting because, again, the producer credit is Kevin McClory on his own. It's not even with Cubby and with Harry Saltzman. It's just produced by Kevin McClory. So you can see there's been some rumblings going on, obviously, with this movie. But it's just interesting to see those names in that order and those credits that are unusual. You don't see that again in any of the other movies.
No, there's a lot of background history to that. And I know quite a few of the listeners and fellow Bond fans are quite intrigued by that whole sort of area, so it'd be really cool to go into that in a bit more detail.
Yeah. So I think we're going to get our mysterious interview out of the way, and then the episode after that will be our Kevin McClory court case wrangle episode. And then lastly, I suppose the point we should make is this is the final film directed by good old Terence Young, the man who started it all.
He was brilliant, Terence Young, fantastic. It's funny enough, I heard something recently where when they first approached him, prior to knowing which Bond film was going to be made first. So prior to having Dr. No sort of ready to go, he was approached and he sort of gave his interest and sort of said, yeah, he liked it. He'd read all the books. But his condition on being a director was only if they made Thunderball, From Russia with Love, or Dr. No as the first film. And he ended up directing all three, which I thought was pretty cool.
It worked out well for him then.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
That is funny. I wonder what it was about those that he liked so much. Because for me, if I was a movie director, which of course I'm not, but if I was, my instinct would be to make Casino Royale first. Obviously, that wouldn't be an option because that had already been made and they didn't have the rights to it. But I don't know. I feel like I'd have probably moved towards something like maybe a Goldfinger first, or I don't know. Even I don't know. I don't know whether making Honor Majesty's first would have been the one that would get my imagination going or not. I don't know.
That story I would have gone for, but because of the whole thing with the wife, you probably couldn't have done that first. Moonraker's a very good book, actually. Moonraker's a really good book.
That's true. I think I want to see that made, like because it's completely different to the movie. I do. There's definitely room for that to be like a faithful adaptation, I think, and it's a shame they haven't done anything with that yet. There's still a few little nuggets
of material in there.
Yeah, totally. There's a few little nuggets of Fleming material left, and that's a pretty sizable chunk. Even the character names. Gala Brand was never used, so it's an interesting one nonetheless. But there we go. So after we've got the title sequence, we move into the Spectre meeting in Paris. Which I thought is, this is the Austin Powers template, isn't it? This is the "I'm very badly burned" kind of stuff, isn't it? But nonetheless, it's amazing. Do we know is that Anthony Dawson as Blofeld again, or is that somebody else this time?
It's the same guy. Yeah, Anthony Dawson, and the guy who provided the voice is Eric Pullman. So you've got obviously another quality voice actor along with Nikki van der Sil. So yeah, that was really good.
Very nice. I thought one of the things that made me smile during this scene is obviously all the different Spectre agents are going through and saying, this is what we earn from heroin smuggling or whatever it is they're up to. And the one that made me laugh was the fact that he says, consultation for the Great British Train Robbery, £250,000, which I thought was brilliant. And they added that in at the last minute because the British Train Robbery had only happened like the same year, I think it was.
Great. Yeah.
So it was like a little nod to real events, which I don't know if anybody outside of England would know about this, but in the 60s, a group of ruffians hijacks a train, and basically it was the biggest haul of in the history of robberies, and they basically got away with a load of money from a train robbery. And it was always known as the Great British Train Robbery. And the guy Ronnie Biggs, who was like one of the guys that managed to escape, sort of smuggled himself abroad to Brazil aboard a container ship and lived there until he was an old man, and then came back to England and faced the music eventually. But it's just a really interesting story if you don't know of it. If you're British, you'll know about it, but if you're not, then it's an interesting one to read about. And now we know that Spectre had a finger in it as well.
Yeah, well, there we go. They must have done. I do like the fact with the whole setup with Spectre pretending to be like a charitable donator to homeless people. I really like that. I think it's great because they'd never ever be questioned, so it's really intelligent. And the fact that they go through this little sort of area where people are chatting about losing their homes, and then suddenly he presses a button. This is where we get into the villains with their gadgets. Press the button, the door slides open, he walks in. And like we mentioned, Ken Adams set. That guy's a legend.
Absolutely. It's funny, isn't it? I noted down what that place was called, and it's basically the International Brotherhood for the Assistance of Stateless Persons. So if you're going to be a terrorist organization, stateless persons would be good people to get hold of, wouldn't it?
Yeah, good cover. Cover.
Jacques Bouvard was Spectre number 6. Which brings me on to the Spectre numbering system, which I imagine would get very complicated. So Blofeld's number 1, obviously, right? So what happens, right? If you're number 6, or if you're number 7, for example, and number 6 gets killed, does number 7 then automatically become number 6, or does he stay number 7? What do you reckon?
And bring in another number 6, maybe. Yeah. I don't know, because we had Kleb and Kronstein, who were what were they? They were number...
I think they were 2 and 3, weren't they?
2. And I think one was 4, one was 2. Or no, one was 3, and I can't remember now. But yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. I guess obviously someone's got to take that number, but I don't know whether they...
Because I wonder whether the numbers themselves are a ranking. Does 2 outrank 3, for example? I just don't know.
No, I'd imagine so. You'd imagine Largo was like... Maybe Dr. No was number 2 at the time he was alive, and then he got shifted, and Largo then became the number 2, perhaps.
That's true. I think that's something that's going to need more research. So
Yeah.
listeners, get involved. Find out how the spectrum numbering system works, and let us know on Facebook or whatever.
The thing is, as well, how big does that go? Because if you're talking You Only Live Twice, Volcano, Leia, Spectre agents, you could be talking quite a few hundred. Number 6,229. Please.
Well, I will tell you something now. Did you ever join the James Bond International Fan Club back in the day?
Back in the day, yeah. That was...
I did as well. And my 00 number, do you remember you had a little membership card and you had a 00 and then whatever your number was? My 00 number, I can still remember to this day, was 00 5475. That was my number.
That was a good number.
So maybe the Spectre's going to thousands as well. You never know. It could be like tennis rankings.
Yeah.
Cool. So Shrublands. Now, I think this is quite possibly Connery at his most sexually aggressive and rapey that we've seen him, basically. He's having a nice little massage with good old Molly Peters. And basically that whole sequence, he's just like, again, he's just forcing himself on her. Do you know what I mean? And she's not having any of it, is she? She's like, there's no time for that and all that kind of business. But he's relentless in his pursuits. What do you reckon about that?
Well, he obviously tries. She says no. So when that fails, he says, well, you know, I'm going to rat on you and you're going to lose your job unless you sleep with me. You know, what a kind of way is there to propose to someone?
I mean, there it is. I mean, what a
gent.
Yeah, what a gentleman. That's what I'm trying to say. That's funny. Yeah, because he says, I suppose my silence could have a price, and then that's it. They're in their little steam room, and away they go.
Getting higgity giggity.
Yeah, I thought that sequence when. How do you feel about that sequence with the rack? That's always felt a bit funny to me, that one.
It is a strange one. It's a sort of thing where having something like that, it's an interesting machine because it's different. You've never seen it before. The idea of it is, you know, it's interesting, stretching the spine or whatever. The fact that it's kind of got a danger level appears to be a little bit strange in terms of the manufacturer. Okay, so here's where your spine will stretch a little bit. Here's where your back will break and you'll pass out. You know, it's like
we'll just put a warning label on that bit. Yeah.
So it did seem strange, but I thought it was still an effective scene, and you know, it's quite good for Lippy because I like the bit early on actually when he's first getting the massage and he sees Lippy and he sees the Tong sign tattoo on him, and that was good. I really like that, and obviously then they have got their two-way play of one trying to get one over the other. So yeah, it's cool. I like that.
I think a word of advice to villains: don't have a tattoo that just announces to everybody that you're a member of a villainous organization, or a ring even, because that kind of gives everything away. Really, you don't want any kind of identifying markers. But if
you have a tat, stick it on your ass.
There you go. There you go. That's Chris's evil organization membership thing. You've got to have a tattoo on your ass. That was membership.
That's part of
number
it,
one.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was a bit funny is how, my memory was the other way around. Bond's got the mink glove and he's minking up Molly Peters, isn't he? Whereas for some reason, I think I might have seen a still of it being the other way around, of her minking him up, and it was just like that was in my mind. And then there he is with her. I was like, that's funny, because it's like, I wonder why they chose to do it that way around instead of, because you would imagine it'd be Bond lying there and getting all the luxury. So it was.
But I guess because she's the spa treatment therapist, she's the one that dishes that out as her job, and so in her off time, in her downtime, you know, repay the favor.
I guess so. He's a giving kind of chap, isn't he? Connery's Bond.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's maybe the thing. Now, next up, we've got the bit in the hotel room. We've got Angelo. He comes along and he takes care of Duval with his little gas thing, whatever that is. Now he makes what I would call a schoolboy error, in the sense that there he is. They're about to embark on their villainous mission, and he says, "I need a bit more money. Actually, 100,000 isn't enough. I need at least $250,000." Now, does he not know what Spectre are like for things like that?
I think this is probably the first time he's encountered that organisation, I'd imagine.
Because, I mean, you just wouldn't, would you? I mean, you just wouldn't.
And even if you did, you might ask for like 50% more,
Yeah.
250% more, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, that's quite a lot to ask for.
It was a bad move. It was a bad move on his part,
Yeah.
and I guess he got his comeuppance in the end. But I just thought that was quite funny. So that whole hijacking sequence I thought was quite interesting, in the sense that I believe that until that point there'd never been a plane hijacking or something. I remember you mentioning.
Yeah, that's right. I remember them saying that like passenger airlines just haven't been hijacked. So maybe it was Thunderball that set it all off.
Maybe it was.
You never know.
This is 1965, and at that point, if there'd been no passenger liners or planes been hijacked, that's quite innocent times, I guess. Really, I mean, like, you consider how often that's happened since then. I mean, it's hijacked city from beyond there, really.
Yeah. I suppose just following the war, they probably didn't. You know, everyone just
wanted to chill out for a bit.
Yeah, just chill out. Yeah, come on.
We've had enough bloodshed. Let's just hang back
be
and chill
nice
out
to
for a while.
everyone.
Yeah, that would be nice. So you got the kind of the bit where the plane lands on the water, opens up the landing gear, the plane sinks down. Down comes Largo in his wetsuit, and I always think that's wicked. I love those boats. They have it in License to Kill as well, don't they? Where they have the little trapdoor in the bottom of the boat, and then they scuba dive down, so you never see them leave the ship, which is great. And then old Angelo's trying to get out of his seat. Largo comes down, cuts the air supply. I just think that's a really nasty way to go, and I think that really sets Largo up as like a good villain, in the sense that there he is, still got his eye patch on, scubaing along, cuts it free, looking the guy in the eyes. You see all his air escaping, and then he just watches him drown under the water, which I think is really, really, not nice is the wrong way to go, but like a nice way to set up the villain. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think the good thing is, before we've seen Goldfinger, and he's a brilliant villain, and we've seen Kleb and she's a great villain, and Dr. No. But this is the first time that we've seen like a major villain get involved in the whole scheme, in terms of, you know, he's the one that's, you know, he could have sent anyone to have cut that guy's hair hose. He wanted to be the one to do it. You know, like, he is a nasty bit of work, but in a good way, because obviously it makes him evil. But yeah, so it's really nice to see the villain leading the battle, so to speak, and getting involved and getting out there. And yeah, for me, he's a really, really good villain. And that bit, it is, you know, you put yourself in Angelo's place at that time, and you kind of like, crap, you know, what could you do, sort of thing. And that was really good. Yeah, great.
He's certainly no. You remember the story in From Russia with Love, where Terence Young and the helicopter crashes in the lake, and then he just gets out, swims back, and he's back behind the camera 30 minutes later. Duval, as Angelo, certainly is no Terence Young, is he really?
No, he's not quite that. No, he's not.
But no, you're absolutely right. Usually, like, do you remember the old 60s Batman series where it would be the Penguin or the Joker, and they'd always stand at the back and let all their minions do all the fighting while Batman and Robin would kick the shit out of everybody? All our villains so far have been somewhat like that, haven't they? They've stood back and let everybody else do the dirty work, whereas this time Largo's a bit more hands-on, which I like.
And I like that scene as well. There's a couple of bits. I mean, the underwater lights when the plane's coming down, you can tell it's not quite there and what have you. But you can kind of, you know, allow it or whatever. But I really like the bit where after he kills him, and then all the other guys come out with a camouflage net. And, you know, I can tell, I think, you know, some people say, oh, it's quite a slow scene or whatever. But I just like the attention to detail. I like seeing the whole process behind it. I like seeing them bring out this cargo net, putting it over the plane and hammering it in. And there's just something about it which I think, this is clever. This is, you know.
I think there's one of the arguments I've certainly heard against Thunderball is that a lot of the underwater scenes can drag on a little bit. But I don't think that's the case. I think I think you can sort of cut corners like that a lot, especially with Bond, where they're like, oh, the audience doesn't need to see that bit. But I like seeing Spectre being meticulous, and I like seeing all the details of the plan kind of coming through, and that's a perfect example of that. Obviously, you got the bit later on where Bond's in the helicopter with Felix, and he spots that, and he's like, oh, there's someone down there, I'm going to go and have a look. Which I don't know whether that's a bit like, that was a bit lucky, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
But that links to a bit of dialogue in the film where do you remember when he first arrives in Nassau and he's with Domino, and what does she say to him? What sharp little eyes you've got.
Yeah, absolutely.
He uses that. And then what does he say back to her?
Wait till you get to my teeth.
And do you remember the part when they've just made love and they come out the sea and she steps on an egg spine and he uses his teeth to get it out?
Dude, I've just had a revelation. I've never considered any of those points. I've learned something today. Well done.
Oh, it's all right. It's
I'm enlightened. That's good, man.
Clever dialogue.
That is good. I like that stuff. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Man, you're going to love Breaking Bad when you start watching it because there's loads of things like that in it. You need to get involved. Maybe we start a whole new podcast for Breaking Bad when you start watching it. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I hadn't thought about that. Now, talking about how a bit sort of liberal with the punishment Spectre can be. Lippy gets the death sentence from Blofeld for even choosing Angelo, because obviously he's asked for more money and he's double-crossed them at the last minute. So yeah, he doesn't stand for any shit, does he, old Blofeld?
No.
If he was the manager of a McDonald's, man, he would be ruthless.
Well, he wouldn't have any employees, but yeah, no. I mean, I think it was good. I think probably what might have happened is back in Shoblands when Bond sort of got his own back. He's having a steam bath or hot bath or whatever, and then just turned up the heat and locked him in. So this poor guy is like roasting. He probably rang back to Ernst. Really sorry, but I've been trapped in this bath. Can you come and help me? And that's probably what set Blofeld off to sort him out.
I guess so. He doesn't appreciate failure. He doesn't tolerate it at all, does he?
No. But what an assassin to have. If I was going to be killed by anyone, she would be the one. Fiona Volpe. I mean, the scene with Angelo when he gets gassed, there are two amazing things in that scene, and both of them belong to Luciana Paluzzi. I think she's absolutely stunning. She's gorgeous.
I've got at the risk of alienating our female listeners, I've got to go on the record and say I think Thunderball features the best cleavage in the entire series from both Domino and from Fiona. Excellent performances there.
Excellent performances. And you've got also Patricia Fearing and Paula, two gorgeous looking women as well. Thunderball, I think, is got the hottest women in the Bond series.
There's a gaggle of hot birds in this one, isn't there? And I think this probably is the hottest group of Bond girls there is. Yeah.
I think they could have possibly upgraded a bit in the pre-title sequence with Madame Roselle Laporte, whatever her name is. Possibly that's the only one, but the rest,
bang on.
We're happy with that. Right. So
I think with that sequence where Fiona kills Lippy, obviously he's just driving along. Bond happens to just be there, and she comes up behind on the bike. And did you hear about the stunt that almost went wrong there? In the sense that the way they filmed that is that they had obviously the car driving along that was Lippy's car. Bob Simmons is kind of sort of like hanging out of it and kind of keeping the car straight, because obviously the car had to sort of be seen to explode somewhat after the rocket hits it, and then he would steer the car off the road onto the bank, and he would jump off at the last minute. But what happened was he didn't jump off; he just kept hanging on, and like they continued filming obviously to get the shot. And there's actually some footage you can see that was taken, and you can see him like getting up off the ground. Bob Simmons, the stunt guy, and he's literally on fire, and he's like doing the whole drop and roll thing and all that kind of stuff. So that was a close shave, and I know they said they all their hearts stopped for a moment when they didn't see him jump away, and they were like, oh my god. But it worked out well in the end. Well,
also after that, I think they were still looking at the car when Bob Simmons had put himself out, and then came around the back. And Terence Young, it's a classic, at the end of Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, when the tank's fallen off and
Sean
the Last
Connery Crusade,
thinks, Last Crusade, sorry, and Sean Connery thinks Indiana's died, and then suddenly he appears next to him, and it was the same thing. Terence Young thought Bob had gone, and suddenly he's and he had a go at him. But brave man.
Of course, Connery being involved in Last Crusade as well, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
Cool. So by this point, we've everything's kind of set up, right? They've got the bombs. Angelo's been disposed of, as has Lippy.
I like the way that they get rid of the bike as well in the lake. It's just a small scene, but it's really nice, isn't it? It's just
yeah. And she does the Timothée hair advert.
I do like that.
It's nice. You've got a bit of a thing for Fiona, haven't you? It's got to be said.
Really? I wouldn't have noticed, but maybe.
But there we go. Now, one of the things I really like, this is one of my favourite scenes in the whole series, actually, is where Bond goes in to see M. And she's like, "Oh, you got to go to the conference room. Every 00 man in Europe has been called in." Now, there was also a little blink and you miss it moment before this as well, when he goes into Moneypenny's office, where he opens the door, he's got his hat and he's ready to throw it, and then he's like, "Oh," and the hat stand's been moved right by the door, so he just hangs up his hat and walks in. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the last time you ever see Bond wearing a hat.
On Her Majesty's.
In the pre-title sequence, but does he actually wear the hat in the gun barrel? But does he actually wear the hat?
He flings it, doesn't he?
Of course he does.
He flings it with Moneypenny. Yeah.
What a bell end! I stand corrected. I apologise.
I think it might be the only one after that though.
Because I wonder whether that was like a little the whole hat thing's coming to an end now, so we'll just hang it up, and that would be like a little nod to that, but obviously not. But yeah,
I wonder if M or Moneypenny moved it. I wonder.
Maybe one of the two, but you've got the big conference room, and you've got every 00 man in Europe who's been called in. Wife's probably lost her dog, and one thing I noticed is that there's 9 chairs. Bond sits in the 7th chair from the left, so it's obviously 001 to 9. But Moneypenny does say every 00 man in Europe. So does that mean there are more 00s, or is that the 9? Because you would imagine, like in the books, there's a 0011. Yeah. I know that much.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe 001 to 9 is. I know, because obviously 007 normally goes everywhere, doesn't he? So perhaps it just so happened that 001 to 7 was in Europe at the time, and then the others could be any number, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
But because obviously he's stationed everywhere, so there's definitely not a segment of saying like 1 to whatever is here, 1 to whatever is there.
Because I remember in one of the books, and I forget which one it is now, one of the Fleming books, I believe he says that there's 3 00s, like in total. Oh, I think it was 002, 7, and 11, which I always thought was odd. But obviously you've got 9 of them in Thunderball, and I just, it's one of my favorite things. I love to see the other 00s. It's just like, it doesn't happen often, and when it does, it's like, oh man, like, and I always want to know a bit about their adventures. What have they been up to? What's 004 been doing this year? Do you know what I mean? And seeing that, so that's a cool scene. And I also love the bit where, as he walks in, M's like, "Now that we're all here," and then it's like, I love
in front
that
of
scene.
everyone.
Yeah,
that's great.
Brilliant.
I love. I think actually, although Moneypenny says every 00 man, there is the 3rd chair from the left is supposedly a woman.
No way!
So
I didn't spot that.
003 in that instance is a woman. So and that got me thinking. We haven't seen any 00 women since then. If that is the case, wouldn't it be great if in Bond 24 we had a 00 agent who was a woman?
Dude, you've just blown my mind. I hadn't even considered the concept that a 00 could be a woman. How awful and sexist of me.
No, but that's not your fault, because that's how the films are portrayed.
That is true, yeah.
Whereas now they can break that mold, bring in a 00 female, a 00 agent who's a woman.
As long as she's
awesome.
Nothing like Jinx, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, that is
not that she
true.
was a 00, but like, you know what I mean?
No, I know. Yeah, it can't be that. It can't be like that. No, someone clever and manipulative in their own right, but a female 00, that'd be great. So 003 back then was a lady. But there's a couple of other things in that scene which I really love, which I'll just quickly point out. One is the folder, the mission folder.
Yeah.
They all sit down, all the 00s. They've got their Operation Thunderball or whatever it is, for your eyes only. With a hand, rip it open, have a look, and that is just class. That's just secret agent stuff right there.
And it says OHMSS on the front, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's OHS MSS, and we see it in 1 or 2 other later Bond films, but obviously we see it at the end of Skyfall when M hands it to Bond, and that is just something which I love. The other thing is the size of the freaking room and the map on the wall,
Yeah.
which is like, it is ginormous, and like, it's just again, it's extravagant sets, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, for a meeting with 9 people, it is a bit of a larger room. You just
Bit
need a little-
excessive, yeah.
But still great. You do need a large map on the wall though if you're going to play.
You
a
have
mission.
to. You have to. Yeah, Spectre's got one, so they had to have one. Yeah.
So one thing what I really like actually about this film in particular is like some of the interplay between Bond and M, in the sense that obviously all those 00s are in the room. They're going to be sent off to various parts of the world to find, where these bombs are and where the threat is and all that kind of stuff. And obviously M wants to send Bond to Canada. Like that's what his mission,
which he's never been.
Yeah, still to this day. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Bond 24,
which I thought was interesting. Then Bond's like, well, no, I respectfully ask, change me to Nassau. And then he shows them the photo of Domino sat next to Duval, and he says, I saw him at Shrublands this night before, and I think he's the RAF guy next to him and says, oh no, it's absolutely impossible. He was seen boarding the Vulcan last night. And then M's like, oi, if 007 says he's not in that voice, obviously, his Michael Caine
should have done
voice.
that voice.
If 007 says he's seen him, that's enough for me. But it's something along those lines, anyway. So we should get Ray Winston as the next M.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he backs up Bond, like, because usually it's Bond being a bit of a naughty boy and being a bit like, but in this movie you see that sort of like protective, somewhat fatherly and trustworthy nature that Emma has in Bond. And again, you see it later on as well. There's one of the ministers, whoever it is, says to him, I guess your man 007 has a sense of the, shall we say, drama. And then Emma's about to say it again. He's like, hey, if Bond thought he was onto something, then blah, 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 blah. And he really backs him up, which I think is nice because you don't see that all that often.
No, he's got a love for his agent, hasn't he, in this one. It's good. Yeah. But, I mean, like the RAF guy, I really like that bit as well. And he sort of says, oh, no, it's impossible. But it's clear as well that the RAF guy hasn't even thought of the possibility of plastic surgery or any, it's what you see is what you get, and the logic behind it isn't there, so it's nice to show that side of things, I think. And with M, anything is possible because anything is possible. Absolutely. Pretty much. So,
and he has an absolute trust in Bond's judgment as well, which is great.
No matter what,
I also think he shows off a slightly warmer side in this movie as well, because that bit where Bond's canoodling with Moneypenny in the office after the meeting, and she says, you may have been able to con the old man. And then he comes in and he's like, I thank you not to refer to me as the old man, which I thought was just like, you can see there's a bit of humour in that. And I was like, that's nice.
And Sean came back with the old, I think I had a hat when I came in. And there's a slight awkwardness, but it's in a nice awkwardness. And I liked it.
I do like that sequence a lot. So moving on the narrative to Nassau, we've got our first sort of tropical location in the movie.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed last night is Connery has got the blue shorts on, the pale baby blue shorts that Daniel's so fond of. Obviously not the exact same styling, but like it's that same vibe. And I wonder whether that was a conscious choice to choose Connery-esque shorts for Daniel.
Yeah, I think, that's a good point, actually. I guess they're sort of blue and tight-fitting and just updated for the modern style. So probably, I couldn't imagine Q in those particular shorts, could you? Poor old Desmond.
No, he wouldn't have liked that.
No, not at all.
So basically, the opening scene we've got from Bahamas, I think, is amazing. I love it. You've got the underwater work with Domino swimming around snorkeling and Bond swimming around snorkeling, and then she gets
just perving on her, basically.
Just perving on her, as let's face it, we all would. And then she gets her flipper caught in the rock, and he rescues her and brings her up and all that kind of stuff. Whilst Felix watches on from the beach. And I love this whole like pursuit of Domino thing that he does, in the sense that he knows he's on a time limit, so he's just got to be relentless in everything, and there's no messing about. He goes straight for Domino. He's like inviting her to dinner and God knows what, and she's playing a bit hard to get, and just that whole thing of Bond under pressure. He's under time pressure. He's still going to be smooth and classy about it, but he's got to keep up the rate of movement somewhat, and just this whole courtship of Domino, I suppose you could say, is really cool. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's cool. It's quick, and I just love the dialogue. I think Thunderball has some of the best dialogue, and when they're climbing into the speedboat after they first sort of come to the surface, and he's like, "Oh, right, I couldn't miss," referring to her sort of two moles, and she's like, "I'm not with you," and he's like, "You soon will be." It's just so clever. There's always double meanings to what they're saying, and we said as well with the sharp eyes and and teeth sort of remark. But yeah, there's a lot going on, and like I really like the way that he Domino's his target. He's got to get to know her and find out everything around that, and it's also, you mentioned about Felix watching them, but there's the other guy as well, Quist, I think his name is Quist, who's obviously Largo's man, who's watching her. So he's being watched by all these people, which I kind of think is quite cool as well at the same time.
It's kind of like I noticed there's a lot of this is almost like a scene in a situation that happens a lot in the future Bonds, in the sense that you've got the whole thing about, oh, my guardian has me watched and all that kind of stuff. She's like a kept woman, which is very much like Severine in Skyfall, isn't it? Like it's that same kind of thing.
And as in Golden Gun.
Exactly, yeah. And it's sort of I don't know, there's something sinister about that, isn't it? Where this woman sort of almost like she's not free. She's this kept woman, and there's this watchful somebody in the background who's keeping his eye on her all the time. Always got his goons keeping his eye on her, which I thought was cool.
Even though she's in the place of like where you think would be the nicest place to be in the world, but then you've got that to counteract.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got the scene where he surprises them at the casino, and he's like, "I thought I saw a spectre at your shoulder, and a spectre at your feet," and all that kind of stuff. Just like blatantly coming in and being like, "Oh, I know what's going on." There's Ray Winston again. I don't know why he keeps coming up to say Cockney Bond. Oh, I know what's going on. But yeah, that sort of interplay at the casino table is great. I really enjoyed that too.
I think it's one of the best casino scenes that Bond does, actually. He's just confident, he's letting him know who he is, but he's ballsy in this Bond. I think the fact is this one is really important. They're talking about two sort of missiles that could potentially blow up a couple of cities or whatever. We're not talking about a couple of diamonds that have been robbed or something. This is big stuff, and he knows that, and he doesn't care if he's throwing himself into the sort of deep end, so to speak. He needs to get it done, and I really like the way that Bond sort of goes about things in this.
There's a lot of that happens in later movies as well, like the whole thing about like in Tomorrow Never Dies, for example, when he goes to the launch party for whatever that thing is. I can't remember now. It's been a while since
the
I've seen that
Carver
one,
Media Group Network.
That's it, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I'd be lost at sea," and all those kinds of comments where it's like, "Is he? You know what I've been up to or not? I don't know." And all those kind of hints. And I thought as well, there was the
fly fishing one from A View to a Kill. That's
there you go. That's another one. And the one Thunderball made me think of is the scene in Casino where he wins the DB5 in the card game, and like he's all angry and pissed off, and he just wants to win his money back. So he takes Solange for a drink, and it's the same thing here. He's like, "Mind if I take the lady for a drink?" And then he gets Domino away while Largo's obviously wrapped up in his card game and stuff, which I thought is a really, really kind of classy move. And I like that must be a stock Bond tactic for when he's in the field and he's like, I'll just separate the woman from the guy and piss him off at cards, and away we go.
And then he can have his time to have a chat to the lady and find out some information.
Yeah.
Works well. I
think like that whole scene where he goes he takes her dancing and he's just quizzing her for information and all that kind of stuff. There's a real kind of class to that, which I really enjoy. Now, one of the things I noticed this time is when he goes back to the hotel after that meeting, and I think it's room 304 he's in. She's like, "Oh, no letters, room 304. He goes up to 304 and then walks next door to 305, lets himself in and does a little sneaky and gets his little tape recorder out and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was cool. I like seeing like Bond do stuff like that's not even really mentioned or acknowledged, like just cool little tricks of the trade that he'll just do. As instead of going in his room, he'll go in next door and use the connecting door and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. What do you think about that?
I think Thunderball probably does that more than any other Bond film. Shrublands, there's an amazing bit where just after the mink glove, where Lippy turns up with a body, and he's just going to get some exercise, and the way that he just moves and creeps through shrublands to watch them. It's just something that's so cool about it. It's just sneaky, and there's in this same scene as well, he does that, something similar, and then later on, which we'll talk about in a minute, when he goes to Palmyra and does it. And this film seems to have so many episodes of Bond sort of sneaking and being a spy, and the way that Connery moves and the sort of the assuredness that he has is it. I mean, I think this film has that over any other Bond film.
I love to see Bond sneaking about. It's one of my favourite things. And we don't see it enough, especially in the later movies. You can be forgiven for sort of seeing Bond as just this all-out, balls-out action hero running around with machine guns. But for me, it doesn't ever get any more Bondy than he's got his black overalls on, or his pajamas, whichever way you want to say it. And he's sneaking around, and you just get the little strains of the Bond theme, like as he's doing his little sneaking. That, I think, is one of the most exciting things that I want to see more of. And you're right, he does a shitload of it in Thunderball, which I'm very appreciative of. Now, this particular scene where he goes back into his hotel room raises a question for me, in the sense that he's listening and he hears all the footsteps and all that kind of stuff, and he's like, okay, I know somebody's in the room. Answers the door, it's Felix, and he's like, hello, 00, and then he's like, bang, punches him in the stomach. Then he goes in, turns on the shower, guy comes out. I love how the shower's red hot immediately. There's no warm-up period. It's great. I wish my shower's like that. And then the guy's there, and he's all like, oh, messed up and burned. And he's like, sorry, Felix, but you were about to say 007, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, right, go back to your master and tell him we're coming for him, or whatever it is he says. Why is that so important that Felix was about to say 007? Because he just called himself 007 in front of the guy that was hiding. So why did that make any difference? Tell me that.
It was a bit strange, that one. I'm not sure about that. I think, hello, 00. Yeah, because he does say, doesn't he? Yeah, it's strange. That's something that's always I've never been sure about either. But I do like the
Felix.
way.
That's what I feel about that.
I think he just wanted to. I really like this Felix as well, actually. I think the chemistry between him and Connery is brilliant, and he gets involved. I know he sort of mainly is a helicopter pilot for the majority of this film, but I really like him. You know, I think he's good. He's he's got a good look for Leiter as well.
He's definitely in the Jack Lord mold, isn't he? He's very much like, you know, if you're not going to get Jack Lord, you'll get this American guy.
Yeah, and he was good.
Rick Van Nutter, what a name.
Yeah. Did well.
But yeah, it's a shame we never saw him again. It's like there's. I feel like if they were gonna use one Felix throughout, I'd have said stick with Jack Lord. If they couldn't get Jack Lord, stick with Rick Van Nutter. But we had so many Felixes already, even by the fourth film. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It was a bit sort of, you know, you lose your audience then, don't you? Kind of. But yeah, no, that was a good scene. I do like the way that he gave the gun back and he says, give it to him. And the guy's like, you're going to shoot me in the back. And then he just takes out the clip and gives it to him. And that's kind of classy. I like that. Because he knows he's no threat. And he's like, the little fish I send back into the sea. Sort of
that's
thing.
Right, yeah. Now, what must be mentioned, you can't fail to mention it in this film, is the wonderful, wonderful Hawaiian shirt that Q wears in the little Q scene. I mean, I think this has got to be my favourite Q costume from the entire series. Like,
I went through my wardrobe this morning to see if I had anything even closely related to that, and I think I had a dodgy Hawaiian shirt back in the day, which I obviously don't have anymore. So this yellow hoodie was the closest I could get to something bright. But
there it is.
Not even a touch on the pineapple shirt. That's.
I think the whole thing with Bond and Q's relationship, obviously the template set in Goldfinger, where they don't really like each other all that much and all the rest of it. I think this is my favourite exchange between the two of them from the whole series. Like that whole thing where he's messing around with the camera and he's telling him what it does, and he's like, is that clever? And he's like, well, if it can take photographs at a depth of 500 meters in the dark, then yes. I love that whole bit. It's just like, oh, Q, you take your work too seriously, bless your heart. He's only winding you up. It's good.
Yeah, I love that scene. There was actually a bit with Desmond where he said that that scene was a little bit longer, and it was originally going to end with Bond walking away while Q was going to speak to him, and Q was like, "I'm not finished with you yet, 007." And then Bond walks back almost like a naughty school kid, and then Q finishes it off. And it's a shame they didn't do that, but. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in it, and the gadgets as well. We've got the mini rebreather, fantastic. We've got that sort of underwater jetpack propulsion thing, which is brilliant. We've got the camera, we've got the watch, the old radioactive pill, which I always thought was a bit of a strange one. I always thought, oh, isn't that dangerous or whatever? But obviously, you know, in small doses, it's.
Do you think they were hinting at the fact that Bond was worried he'd have to stick it up his arse? Because like there is that whole thing where he's holding it, and it's a big old pill.
Yeah.
And then he's
do?
like, "What do I do with this?" And then there's a moment where sort of Q looks, and it's like, "We'll swallow it, of course." And I was wondering whether that was something they played on, that it was meant to be.
I'd never thought of that, but I do like your sordid mind. So next time I watch it, that's going to be the first thing that crops up. But yeah, no, maybe it's a suppository, radioactive.
Yeah, absolutely, radioactive suppository. Maybe we'll see something like that in Bond 24 to bring him back down to earth.
So.
Who knows? But yeah, a good classic Q scene, I think there. Now, I think sort of as you move on, you've got the kind of the bit where Bond scuba's out to the Disco Volante to check it out. I've just revealed the name of my trivia question, haven't I? The answer of my trivia question.
So I didn't hear.
Damn it! All right. Well, I'll let you have the point anyway, regardless. So he scubas out to Largo's boat to kind of scope it out, and you've got the whole sequence with the diver that comes out to try and get him, and they're dropping grenades on him and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously he takes off his tank and his mask and just lets it float up to the surface. And the baddies are like, "Oh, we must have hit him with a propeller. Let's go back and tell Largo." And that's it. They don't need to see a corpse. They just want to see. They're happy with the tank, which I thought was funny. But yeah, that's that kind of sequence leads into one of my favorite scenes between Bond and a Bond girl in the whole thing. Obviously, he swims back to shore, and Volpe just happens to be driving past, and he hitches a ride with her.
So do you think that was all planned in terms of she was always there in case he came ashore, or
I don't know.
I mean, or is it complete coincidence? Because how would they have known that he was going to do it that night?
It's a funny one. Like it's like the Skidoo guy in Die Another Day after the wave incident.
Not as bad as that.
Not as bad. No, anywhere near as bad as that. But it just seemed to be very convenient that she was just driving along at that one time. But the scene I like is the bit where Bond goes to Palmyra to see Largo, and he gets the clay pigeons out and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, and this reminds me of that scene in Moonraker as well, where he's like, "Oh, it seems terribly difficult." Yeah. Doesn't even really look. He's shot from the hip. And he's like, "No, it isn't, is it?" It's like it's brilliant. I love that whole exchange. It really makes me laugh.
It's good, and he does another bit where when he first arrives at Palmyra, and Domino's having a little splash in the pool, and he gets her out, and then Largo comes over with a gun and says, "Oh, do you know a little bit about guns?" He says, "No, but I know a little bit about women." And that's quite a nice exchange. I like that. And he's always topping Largo, isn't he?
You're right in the sense that a lot of the dialogue in this is brilliant. Like a lot of the witty banter is bang on. Yeah. I do like that bit where, you know, we've said before about how like a villain, a Fleming villain, has to have something a bit wrong with him. Like he's either a bit deformed or you know, there's something up with him. He's ugly, or God knows what. He's got some sort of imperfection, no hands or whatever it is. I like how Vargas is just like this weird asexual kind of guy. He's like, what's the quote? He says, "Vargas does not smoke, does not drink, does not make love. What do you do, Vargas?" Like, this poor guy. He's just stood there being ridiculed in front of everybody. But yeah, Vargas is, I don't know, I would say he's probably one of the most forgotten henchmen in the history.
I quite like him. He's got that sort of strangeness to him. In fact, you know who he reminds me of, or reminds me of him, is Elvis in Quantum of Solace.
Very much so. Now you say that, yeah,
because I've got a similarish look, and I've got that sort of strange, sort of slight weirdness
wiry,
to them.
skinny body, big-headed kind of dudes. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I like him. He's definitely got that sort of creepy, weird vibe. You wouldn't want to, spend any time alone with him. No,
the other guy is kind of like your stock henchman, isn't he? Yeah. Yanni. Whereas Vargas, you're like, this guy is let's just get away from him, sort of thing. Yeah.
I think the next bit, I know you're fond of this, but I think it's one of my favorite scenes. There's a lot of my favorites in this movie. Is the scene? Obviously, they kidnap Paula, and Bond gets.
That's quite a hard hitting scene, actually.
Yeah,
when they kidnap Paula and they like got the pillow on her face, and like it's a quite a tough old scene, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bond gets, I think it's Pinder and Felix, cut the power to Palmyra. I'm going to go and check it out. And that whole sneaking sequence is brilliant. I love that stuff. Like, he's obviously sneaking through the basement. He sees Paula's body and then comes out. Just that whole thing where he's playing the guards off against each other, shooting one direction, shooting from the other, and all that kind of stuff is just brilliant. It's a masterclass in spy tactics, I would say.
The only downside is when he climbs up the roof and drops his PPK and it goes off.
Yeah.
But I mean, but as a scene, it's probably one of my favorites in the whole film. And like we've been saying, it's just him dressed in black. It's nighttime. He's sneaking around. Like there's a guard walking. He chops his leg so he falls down. Then he sneaks out. He takes out another one. And then when he gets back outside, like you said, shoots one way and shoots the other. And it's just class, isn't it? There's something about it. And then obviously you've got the great battle where he ends up in the pool and the fight's going on and shoot him. No. I've got a better idea. And then puts the cover over and he thinks, right, that's it. Open the hatch and let them in.
Well, there you go. This is like the archetypal Bond villain thing. It's a swimming pool with sharks in it. Like this is the first time we've seen that, and they don't have laser beams attached to their heads sadly yet, but it's moving in that way. But yeah, like I think that whole, what I think I love about Bond when they get it right is that he's not an action hero. He's not supposed to be running in the front door with a machine gun. He's supposed to outwit people. Like he's supposed to outwit those who are stronger, better equipped, and sometimes stronger and outnumbered, definitely, like in that kind of situation. Like you want to see him using his wit and his skill. Yeah. Not unlike the free running sequence in Casino Royale, where he's against somebody who's far superior to him, but he just manages to outwit him by using out of the box thinking. And I think with that whole thing, shooting the one way, shooting the other, and playing the guards off against each other is a perfect example of that. You don't want to see him picking up an AK and then just mowing everybody down and running away. That's not what this is about. But what I really like is that, he ends up in the pool with the sharks and he pops in the rebreather and there's some shenanigans that go on there. And that sequence is just brilliant. Like, and I know there's that thing between the two pools, isn't there? Like the little door that comes through in the little tunnel. And there's that shocking thing where you see Connery literally shit himself when the shark comes towards him today. I remember you were telling me about the plexiglass or something had broken or something. What was the deal with that?
Well, they just didn't have enough. They couldn't get enough. I think it was actually Ken Adam that designed this sort of plexiglass tunnel so that Bond could swim down with the sharks around it, so it looked like he was there. But there was I think it was like a 4-foot gap that they had, which they didn't tell Connery about, obviously. And
I love that. They've just gone with it anyway, left a massive gap in it. And we just won't tell Connery. He'll be all right.
Would that happen nowadays?
No way.
So yeah, and one of the sharks just managed to swim in, and that bit where you see him looking like you said, shit himself and move to the side is actually a shark heading for Connery. It's not faked or anything like that.
And it is genuine fear on his face as well, which is great. It does make me laugh. That there's another case in this part as well with remember how there was some awful stuntman face in Dr. No when he's climbing back through the tunnels.
Oh yeah,
there's
that's right.
Pretty obvious stuntman face in this one as well. When he puts the rebreather in, puts it in his mouth, that's not Connery doing that. That's I guess it's Bob Simmons again. And there's a lot.
It's a shame because something like that's quite simple, I suppose it's time and everything, isn't it?
But there's a lot of it. He's putting the rebreather in, and a lot of the swimming scenes, like you can clearly see Bob Simmons' face. It's not Connery at all.
That's a shame.
Apart from the the close-up scenes.
You've got so you've got the saltwater pool with the sharks. You've got the freshwater pool where they swim. When they lift the hatch up, does the salt go into the freshwater pool? Do they contaminate each other? And and if the shark was to swim into the freshwater pool, isn't freshwater bad for sharks? So surely that's why they're in the seawater pool. So would the sharks even go into the freshwater pool if they're seawater sharks?
I think somebody's pulled the wool over Largo's eye at that point.
Yeah.
I
like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. One I hadn't previously considered. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Interesting. I don't know. Anyways,
poor old Largo. He's like, yeah, I've got a freshwater pool and a saltwater pool, but they're really the same thing. That's funny. But there's a part where Connery climbs out of the pool at the end, and you see that one shark like make a beeline for him and just reaches him just as he gets out. I thought it was kind of odd, and again, this would never happen today because animal rights would go apeshit. But it was a dead shark that they put on a wire, and then kind of like ratcheted it in, so it's just this dead shark corpse shooting towards Connery as he gets out, and that's the way they managed to time it so well. I always just thought it was a real shark that was going for him, but it was a shark on a wire, which is quite funny.
At least it was dead and not a live one with a wire.
That's true.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's a couple of quick things in relation to Thunderball as well, which is quite interesting to point out. One of which is in this film, where there's been versions of the film that have been released with different dialogue. And one of the bits where he hops out of the water is one of the scenes. I think, what does he say when he hops out of the water this time? Better luck next time, chap, or something like that. He says to the shark. But there's another version where he says, "No, you can tell about the one that got away," or something like that. And there's a few instances in this film where there's been different lines at different segments, and it just seems like, I know that it seems like it was a bit of rushed in places. We mentioned the dubbing, not being quite right for certain scenes and certain lines and stuff. So I'm not quite sure if there was a rush to get it out in time. Or
I do know. I remember watching in the documentary that they were very much pushed for time. They wanted to get it out. I think it was Christmas they were heading for or something. Yeah. And I remember the production crew who were like building the sets and stuff had to sleep in shifts to get it done in time. Oh. So I think it was under serious time pressures. Especially, I mean, when you consider it's only a year after Goldfinger and the scope of this movie, no wonder they had to switch to 2 years after this point, because it's like there's no way they could keep that up. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like there's different versions. Like for example, some versions that have been broadcast on TV or came out on VHS, for example, were different versions. And there's another scene at the end where Felix and Bond are in the helicopter, and there's like a manta ray swimming, and the line you hear the line "manta rays, it's unusual to see them out this far." But who said that line is Pinder, the actor who played Pinder says that line, but he's not even in the helicopter. Like there's like a really weird editing thing that goes on.
That's strange, isn't it?
It is really weird. So it must have been like a dodgy edit that like. But why are there so many different versions? There's a lot of different versions kicking about. I mean, I don't even know which version I've got on Blu-ray or whether what's going on there. But it's interesting nonetheless how stuff like that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely. It makes it for quite an individual Bond film, really, with all that sort of stuff going on, doesn't it?
Yeah, makes it interesting. There's a lot of conversation fodder to be had with that, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah. Now, one of my favourite scenes of all time is the one where Bond walks in on Fiona in the bath, and she says, "Give me something to put on." And then he hands her a pair of shoes. I mean, that's just the best thing I've ever seen in all my life. That's one of those things where it's like, I think, oh man, I wish I was that cool to come up with stuff like that. It's brilliant. And just the cocky look on his face when he gives them to her as well. It's amazing.
And then just sits down, crosses his legs, and just waits for her to get up. It's a fantastic scene, that. And like, I don't know, I think every man should try that once in their life and see what happens.
Yeah.
No, it's a great scene of that. And again, I think the sort of dialogue and the chemistry is really good with that bit, and she knows he's just been sort of sneaking about, and he sees the ring again, so he knows she's sort of obviously Spectre. And again, it gets to the point where they each know what the other one in it is about, but they're using the other one to their own, for their own sort of scheme, so to speak. Yeah. And then you've got sort of a great scene after that as well, with the wild Mr. Bond, James Bond.
Do you like wild things, Mr. Bond, James Bond? I think there's a scene that comes shortly after that, it's the scene basically where he's on the beach with Domino, and he has to tell her about her brother being dead, which is one of those things where like he's basically got to turn her against Largo and get her on side, so he can give her the Geiger counter camera and all that kind of stuff. But it sort of shows the harder side of Bond, which we haven't seen a lot of in this particular film. It's not like in From Russia with Love, for example, where he's really harsh to Tanya and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, he's basically like, your brother's dead, here's his watch and dog tags, basically help me get Largo kind of thing, which again obviously he has to do because he's up against the clock. But it's another sort of scene where you see Bond essentially manipulating somebody for his own ends. He's very quick and harsh about it, and that's that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think he obviously had that intention prior to meeting up with her, because he got the watch and the dog tags from when he went and found Duval, or it was Angelo at the time, in the plane. Yeah. So he knew what was going to happen. I like the way that when he sort of, just after telling her, he sort of puts on his sunglasses as well. I think that's quite cool. And there was a bit there in one of the documentaries that was saying that was purposefully done to hide his eyes, so he didn't have to show his emotions when telling her, which was an interesting viewpoint, which I'd never really thought about before.
Yeah,
but,
interesting.
Yeah, and then I think you've got the whole bit where it's sort of explaining about the what's going to happen, Largo's plan and everything. But then you've got, Vargas is behind you. And you've got one of the best lines in the film coming up after that. I mean, what a scene, and what a bit that is.
I was gonna say, let's perform it. I was gonna do the sound of the harpoon, and then you.
Okay, go for it.
Okay,
then.
so
go for it.
I don't know if my harpoon noise will match up to yours.
I think you got the point.
Very good. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, I like that whole.
Sorry.
Sorry. I thought we'd finished, but we carrying on. I like it. I like that scene a lot. And Vargas is gone, and rightly so. He deserved it. Now, the kind of the following sequence after that really is the climactic underwater battle sequence, isn't it? Really. And again, like the look and the scope of this scene is pretty incredible. Just how logistically they would shoot a scene like that. When you think about how you got so many divers all down together, all with their air bubbles flying off and obscuring visions and God knows what, sand being kicked up from the bottom, how they managed to get that looking so great on film is a mystery to me, like especially that long ago as well. I mean, it's got to be the greatest underwater photography, certainly in an action movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, easily. And I think they used to go up on deck, sort of plan their routine, go down and try to perform it. But it's not going to happen on the money every time, because obviously you're underwater, things are going to,
I remember reading that they rehearsed it on like little trolleys. They would lie down on their stomach and they practiced in like a car park, and that's sort of how they choreographed it before they went down. But of course, you can only go on a two-dimensional plane in that sense, but going down and up and all the rest of it underwater is incredible. I mean, you can imagine choreographing the train fight in From Russia with Love is difficult enough. Doing it underwater with X amount of divers, like tens of divers down there. I mean, that must have been an absolute nightmare to kind of organise.
And then you got the sharks and everything else.
Exactly.
As well.
And talking about sharks, there was that interesting point where they were saying, well, how were they going to protect the divers from the sharks? Like they could start getting a bit snap happy. And basically, again, animal rights would go apeshit today. But they put little wires on their fins so they could actually control the path of the shark. So if it was getting too close to them, they would just alter they'd just prod them with this wire, basically, so the shark would swim the other way, which is incredible, really, when you think about it. I mean, that would never happen today in a million years.
Well, there's one bit where one of the guys harpoons a shark, and that was actually done for real because it did get too close.
Yeah.
So that actual shot in the blood was for real, which is
I did wonder
crazy.
that actually when I saw that moment, as the shark's spinning off, you can see the blood coming out of it. I was like, man, that looks too real to be a special effect.
Yeah. But what a scene! I mean, I love it. This is the first proper big battle of good guys versus bad guys. You've got the guys in sort of the bad guys in the black and the good guys in, is it orange or red?
Orange.
I'll go with
jumpsuit,
orange. Yeah. And
are you really colourblind?
I am, yeah.
No way, I didn't know that. I've
Not
learned something new
not
about you today.
completely, hence my top.
I was going to say, no wonder you got the hoodie on today.
No, not bad, only a little bit. But yeah, so you got the first big battle. That's kicking off, and they came up with every way imaginable of killing someone with a knife and a harpoon and a spear, and you know it's great. And then old Daddy Boy comes along as he's dropped in with his and the kitchen sink, and then you know it's great. And he does the same sort of thing as he did in From Russia, where he sort of is above the chaos, but he rips off one guy here, he hits another guy there, he shoots another guy there, and like just makes his way through, taking them all out really.
Did you notice the editing mistake with that, where he takes the mask off and puts the new mask on?
I was going to mention that. Yeah, it's
when for the benefit of listeners, if you haven't spotted it, basically Largo rips Bond's mask off. He's wearing the blue mask. He spins around. He sees one of the dead bad guys on the floor. He picks up the mask, which is black, puts it on so he can see again. However, in the very next shot, literally a split second later, his mask is blue again.
Yeah. I know,
so I guess that's another one of those rush jobs in it there to get it out before Christmas.
I think that's what it is, which, yeah, I think a lot that sort of does come to show with this film, but I think it must have been the time. But, you know, it's only a small thing, really.
One thing that did make me laugh just before the big climactic battle, actually, I forgot to mention, is you know how Bond, basically they lock him in with the bombs, don't they? And he sort of with the trolleys that the bombs were on. And then he swims up and he gets onto that little sort of rocky sort of chasm, and he sort of just sits down and waits for them to come and get him, basically. And I love that bit where Felix comes bombing along in the helicopter, and he's got that tracking device, and he's like, go left, and then they alter course to go and find Bond just before he shoots off the flare. Felix just goes to the other guys in the helicopter, and it just makes me laugh. It's a good thing that homing capsule he swallowed is still working. It's like, thanks for the reminder there, Felix. Yeah. The audience might have forgotten that he took that capsule. Yeah.
Especially when he's holding like a tracker thing. In his,
It's like everyone in that helicopter knows what's going on there. Like you don't have to explain it, but it does make me laugh. But yeah, so you've got the big climactic battle. And then you've got something I didn't consider before is as Largo's boat's trying to escape from the Navy or the Coast Guard, or whoever that is chasing him. He's got a boat not unlike the DB5 in that it's got a smoke screen.
That's true, yeah.
Which I thought was quite cool. So it's like they jettison the cocoon, and there's all the dudes on the back of the boat like fighting off the Navy. Does the smoke screen, and then he speeds away with the front half of the boat, which
I really like that. I think that's so class. The Disco Volante, I know we'll mention it again, but it is fantastic, isn't it? It's classy. It's great. It's got that dual purpose, and
I've always thought to myself, if I'm ever fortunate enough to own a boat at some point in my life, even if it's just a little rubber dinghy, I'm going to call it one of two things. I'm either going to call it the Disco Volante, or I'm going to call it
the alternative name,
or the alternative name, or I'd call it the Ningpo.
Oh, okay. The Ningpo. That's good. The little dingy Ningpo.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I like that sequence. And again, you've got a somewhat. I don't know. I'm not mad about that fight with Largo at the end. It's all really sped up and sort of a bit. I mean, there's no way that boat is going as fast as it appears on screen.
No, I like the fact that Bond gets onto it through the hydrofoil when you see him climbing on, because that's good, and he's going fast there. And the actual fight inside, I don't think is too bad, because again, that's quite hard hitting, and he's against a captain, and he's against Largo, and he's like, Bond's going pretty apeshit here. He's like hitting one guy, hitting another, turning. He's going around. But the footage of the actual boat going along past the rocks, that was overcranked way too much. Yeah. They could have dropped that down a notch or two, I think.
Yeah. But I think it's cool that Domino is the one that gets him at the end. I think that's comeuppance needed there. And that was a cool moment. And it
just goes to prove that everyone there's that whole stigmatism behind Bond girls and how they're just things to look at and they had no brains or anything. That might have been the occasion, possibly 2 or 3 times, which we can go into at some other point. But Domino, I know she's sort of a kept mistress, but she's clever, she's intelligent, she kills Largo in the end, the man that's obviously been keeping her down. And there's a lot of good stuff about that, and she's a really good character, and I think it was portrayed really well as well, like the vulnerable side to her. I think Thunderball had a lot of good actors, a really
strong,
good cast. I think.
strong female characters. Thunderball, had,
Yeah.
definitely, without a doubt. Yeah. I think, I think that scene at the end. She comes up and she's like, "I'm glad I killed him," and he's like, "You're glad."
You're glad. Yeah.
That's one of the things I noticed in this one. Connery's Scottish accent comes out big time in this movie. Have you noticed that? Where there's like the bit after he's on the rack at the beginning and he's like, "Somebody's gonna wish today it never happened," and he's proper got his Scottish brogue on. And then it happens again. The bit where like the bit where Felix fishes him out after he sets off the flare and the tracking device and stuff.
Yeah.
That whole bit where he's filling him in, he's like, "Oh, the target's Miami," and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's full on Scottish accent. There's no holding back there, which did make me laugh. But yeah. So you've got the classic Bond ending after that. You got him and Domino in a dinghy, and then you've got this rather wonderful skyhook mechanism, which looks a bit crazy, to be honest with you. It's like it's just lying down in the dinghy, and then the next minute it's like being dragged through the air at 1,000 miles an hour.
I love it. I've always wanted to go since I was little. I just want to go on one now. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
But there's one bit about that though. When he's in the dinghy, and he's got the rope, leading to, he blows up the sort of red arrow things, and as they go up, when he rests back, the rope is actually under his arm and not off his back. So if it had sort of thrusted him up, it would have basically almost wrenched his arm off, I reckon. His arm off. So,
I also think it's funny how he doesn't hook Domino in either. He's just literally cuddling it.
He's just holding it.
So there's no way that plane... You right there, mate?
Yeah.
A little bit of a microphone issue there. That plane would have come on and just basically wrenched him out of the dinghy, and she would have just fallen through his arms and just been left in the dinghy on her own. Yeah. But hey, we're not going to complain. It's good. It's
great ending. Great ending. I really like that ending. Actually, it's good ending.
So there we have it. Thunderball discussed and reviewed. Yeah. So after the discussion and after watching it again this week, how does it sit in your pantheon of Bond so far?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned earlier, but I mean, for me at the moment, that and From Russia are my two favourite Connerys, at least. It's hard to pick one over the other. I just love the escapism of Thunderball. I really do. I remember when I used to go swimming, I would imagine myself, Sean Connery, when he swims up to those stairs before he gets, there's like a stream bit, and he swims up these stairs, and then, before he gets to the point where they all put on the scuba gear, and he walks across by this bridge. And I'm like, when I'm in the swimming pool when I was like 6 or 7, that was me, I'd swim up to the stairs underwater, and I'd get out at the right point, and I'd do it. And then the underwater battle I'd reenact. And for me, it's just got that element of the exoticness and the escapism and
that's the beauty of it. I think, like, for me, that's why I love Dr. No so much is a lot of the locations in there. And I think part of the reason why I wasn't like, Skyfall was a bit too London-y for me. It was like a bit grey and bleak looking, and I want more, like, there's just something exotic and amazing about Nassau and the Bahamas in general. Like, you got it in Casino Royale again as well. Where it's just that setting just feels like Bond. It just stinks of Bond all the way. I've got to admit, like, I think when I went to the Bahamas that one time for that week, the whole it's the Atlantis resort basically, which you see in the background in Casino when they arrive. And a lot of the Thunderball stuff is still there. Like, it's crazy. Like that, the scene where they're sat by the pool drinking Bond and Domino, that's still there. It's completely abandoned. There's nothing there anymore. But the pool is empty. The pool is still there. That whole setting still looks the same as it was. And that part where he follows the Spectre divers down and he climbs up on that little sort of those little stone steps and he hides and he's kind of scoping them out. That's still there. That's still identical. Which is just crazy. It's just mental that that's all still there.
When they were scoping locations for Thunderball, I believe they found the construction frame for a hotel which was never built. That same construction frame was later used in Casino Royale for the parkour running sequence. That's
right. Yeah, yeah. It's just like an empty shell of a building. It's just still there 50 years on. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy, but brilliant though.
It is mental.
So what were your feelings on after watching it then?
It's much the same, to be honest. I love it. It's right up there. I think if you said to me, choose a favourite Connery, I don't think I can. I think it's like I say, Doctor No, I love it, and From Russia with Love, I love it. Goldfinger, I still love, but after we discussed it the time before last, it's kind of sunk a little bit for me. Thunderball, I love it. I suppose if you were going to get super critical, you would say, well, there's a lot wrong with it in terms of mechanics, in the sense of dodgy editing, dodgy dubbing. There's a bit of rush jobbing going on here.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say it loses points, but in terms of just the movie, it's just brilliant. I love it. I think if I had to choose a favorite so far, I don't know if I could. I really don't know if I could. I would say, I think I would have to possibly go with Doctor No. I think.
Yeah, Doctor No is great. Doctor No is fantastic. Doctor No is brilliant. I mean, I'm putting that sort of below the other two, but I don't know. Whenever I watch it, it's always surprised me at how good it is, Doctor No.
Yeah.
But for me, I think Thunderball is probably the most Bondian of the film so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the biggest, and it's definitely it's got the biggest in scope, and definitely got the hottest girls, that's for sure. So yeah, I don't. And now I've just said that, I don't know. I can't choose. I'm not. I refuse.
That's all right. We don't have to.
We
like them all. That's all right.
I'm getting all stressed out having to choose. I can't do it. I can't do it. Anyway, so I think to start to wrap things up, let's do answer our trivia questions.
Okay.
So you go first,
first,
buddy. You go for it.
All right, I'll go first. Okay, so my trivia question was: in the film, there are 2 cameos from people from the Bond production team, and would you know who they are and in what scenes?
Kevin McClory.
Yeah, well done. Nicely
Thank
done.
you very much. And again, the other one is going to be a guess. Is it Jack Whittingham?
No, not Jack Whittingham. That is a good guess, though. It's a guy called General Rushon who helped the Bond team get Fort Knox in Goldfinger, or fly around Fort Knox. He also got the sort of armada at the end of Thunderball. He got the rocket fuel to blow up the Disco Volante, which was experimental and
very nice.
Quite secret at the time.
Yeah.
And so he had a little cameo. I think the scene, the big map room scene, when after they've listened to the tape about the diamonds, and he's there just sort of sitting on the table with the others, with M and that lot. Yeah,
I didn't know that. Where's McClory's scene then? Where does he show up?
He's in the casino scene. When Bond first arrives at the casino, he walks through. You always have like a little room that you walk through before you get to the casino. Yeah. He's there, sat on a chair, smoking a cigar with a big moustache.
Very nice. Yeah. Very nice indeed. That's funny that you're talking about the explosion of the Disco Volante at the end. I've just answered my question again. Like that was like there'd never been an explosion that large, I don't think, caught on film ever, because the special effects guy John Steers was saying that basically the explosion was so huge it just shot a huge amount of the boat up into the air, and they're like thinking, well, the boat's just not there anymore, like where is it after that explosion? And then they look up and then they just see this cloud of debris just like coming down, and they're like, and it was shot so far up they could have the conversation where they're like, well, I don't want to worry you guys, but there's like a boat about to land on our heads kind of thing. And so they had to clear out of there before it flattened them. But the funny thing was, they said when they got back to Nassau, all of the windows on the main street were just completely blown out as a result of that explosion. It was 30 miles away. So that tells you how big that explosion was, which is crazy.
That's pretty impressive.
But, yeah, pushing boundaries once again. But so my question was, what is the name of Largo's ship in Thunderball, and what is the name of Largo's ship in Never Say Never Again?
Okay, well, the Thunderball one's extremely tricky. You might have helped me on this one once or twice or 3 times, but I'm going to go with the Disco Volante.
Well done.
Thank you very much. But for Never Say Never Again, now this might be, I don't know if I definitely know, but I think it is the English version of the Disco Volante, which is the Flying Saucer.
Well done. Bang on.
Ooh.
Of course, Disco Volante in Italian means the Flying Saucer. Saucer. There it is.
And I wonder if that was the original name of the boat that they bought. I'm not sure. or whether it was just in the script, perhaps. I'm not sure.
I think the original boat was called the Flying Fish, if I remember
The
rightly.
Flying Fish, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And which is coincidentally quite similar. But
Yeah, absolutely. So there we have it. So let's fire off some Bond facts. I'm going to go first.
Go for it.
The character of Count Lippy is a reference to Ian Fleming's old friend from his days as an intelligence officer, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Bernhard's full name was Bernhard von Lippe Biesterfeld. And apparently, I've got no idea if I pronounced that properly, but apparently Prince Bernhard was very pleased with the reference, as he should be. Stuntman Bill Cumming was paid an extra £250 bonus danger money to jump onto a live shark in Largo's infested pool. I'd want more than 250.
I think I'd want more. Yeah, definitely.
The Fiona Volpe character was originally Irish and called Fiona Kelly in earlier drafts of the script, but the surname was changed to suit the Italian nationality of Luciana Paluzzi, who was cast in the role of Fiona after being rejected for the role of Domino. The character does not appear in the book, so that's interesting. One of the things that really makes me laugh is the foreign translations of Bond titles. And Thunderball's name in the Netherlands when it was released was "Calm Down, Mr. Bond."
That's amazing.
I'd love to know the logic behind that title, but there you go.
Well, that's Bond 24 straight away.
Yeah, there's an unused one. And then a couple more. You got it's the first Bond film in which Bond does not smoke.
That's an interesting one as well.
Yeah, he likes a cigarette in Dr. No, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And this is an interesting one, which I didn't previously know, is that the reason why many of the villains are played by Italian actors was because the original script did not involve Spectre, but Italian gangsters in the Sicilian mafia, with Largo as a crime boss.
I'm glad they did introduce a Spectre aspect.
Absolutely, yeah, completely.
But yeah,
But, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about Spectre and the implications of it in our Kevin McClory court case Battle for Bond episode coming up soon.
Definitely.
But there we go. So there's my Bond facts. Let's hear yours.
Okay, so here we go. So there's a bit where the underground bomber, after they finished, they blew up the model so no one else could photograph it basically and use it.
You mean the sunk Vulcan bomber?
That's right. Yeah. So the frame of it was left, and that frame is still there today, and it's now been incorporated by the actual reef, which has grown around it, so it's become part of the coral reef there.
Wow,
and you
cool.
can go and dive and visit it. So that's something else to do on our Bond bucket list.
We need to do that shit, man.
At some point. Fleming was really good friends with Jacques Cousteau, who is the inventor of the aqualung, which started off the whole scuba diving thing, which is pretty cool. When Terence Young, this is quite an interesting one, when he was first approached to direct a Bond film before even Dr. No had been made or suggested, he was interested. He'd read the books. He liked Bond, but he said only on the proviso that the first film he'd direct would either be Thunderball from Russia with Love or Dr. No. And those were the three that he ended up directing. So that's
very nice.
Cool. There's an interesting part as well with... with the Fiona Volpe scene, you know, when they're just after they've had sex in bed and just before the two bad guys turn up at the door or whatever.
Yeah.
The dialogue there was a lot of the lines that Fiona Volpe used were the same lines that critics used to slate Bond. So she called him a sadistic brute, and that was in the newspapers. And she also said that he only has to make love to a woman to have the heavenly choir singing. And that, you know, so it's quite cool that they use that to sort of go against the critics, as it were.
That's fun.
Yeah, which is quite cool. Connery only granted one interview during the NASA shoot, and that was with Playboy magazine. Good man. And the crew didn't know what atomic bombs looked like. So basically, Peter Lamont and Ken Adam were given a tour of RAF Bomber Command, and they had a secret hidden camera, which they used to take photos of the bomb, and then from those photos created the bombs for the film.
Very nice.
It's quite interesting. Yeah.
There's a funny thing about that scene with Fiona Volpe as well, in the sense that there's a scene where she's disrobing him, which was cut, where Bond says, "The things I do for England." And they cut that out. But if you recall, he says that line when Helga Brandt has got him tied to the chair and You Only Live Twice. So they recycled a bit of Thunderball in there, which I thought was quite cool.
Well, that's good. I like it. I like it. It's nice.
So there we go. We're gonna finish up now with our Guess the Quote round.
Okay.
So let's hear it again, Mr. Wright.
Right, so here we go. My quote for this week is, Gracias, Galina. I'll see you in Miami.
I love the fucking delivery of that. I love the lean forward to the camera. It was like,
Do you want me to do it again?
yes, please. I would love it.
Okay, here we go. Gracias, Galina. I'll see you in Miami. Sorry.
I love it.
Sorry, man. One more, or are you good?
No, I two's enough, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know the answer to this one.
I think you had a good idea of which character it was.
What was my idea last time? Give me a hint.
It was Bond. It was a certain guy who played Bond.
Roger.
It is a Rog.
Is
in
it
the pre-title, Rog?
Is it the pre-title of Octopussy?
Yeah! Nice, man. He says it to Bianca just before he goes to fly the Aquastar
There you
jet
go.
away.
I got it. I felt I didn't know whether I'd heard Roger saying it or whether I'd heard Kamal Khan saying it, but I felt Octopussy for some reason.
Yeah.
But
Good.
it worked out well.
Nicely done.
Okay, so I've got a one-word quote this week, dude. All
Ooh,
it is one word. Okay.
All you need is the one.
Okay, here we go. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
My guess, the quote for this week is delicious. Would you like to hear it again?
I would, definitely. Yeah, go for it.
Delicious. Any ideas?
That could refer to a lot of things. I'll have to play it around a few times and see what I can come up with.
There we
But it's
go.
a good one.
Thanks very
one.
much.
Yeah,
So that's all for episode 0010 of James Bond Radio, our review of Thunderball. Now, next up, we can't really reveal what's going on next time because it's our super top secret interview.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, let's leave a cryptic preview of episode 0011. We will be interviewing someone who has been involved in Bond in some way, shape, or form. How about that?
Who may be dead or alive.
Exactly. It might be a man or a woman. We're not revealing it, but
I think we've just given the game away, haven't we? Really?
You reckon? Yeah, I'll be impressed if anybody gets it. Though I do remember I did actually tell one of our listeners emailed in, and I revealed it because he literally emailed in the second after I found out that this person was coming on the show, and I was so excited I told him. So Jack Lugo, if you're listening, keep stum. Otherwise, you're going to reveal it too soon. But yeah, so I've seen Jack on Facebook a lot. He's a good poster. But yeah, so next time is going to be a super top secret interview, which we're all very excited about. And that'll be episode 0011. So until next time, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
James Bond Radio will return with our super top secret interview with somebody who may or may not be alive and is involved with Bond directly. All right, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.